Hey, how's it going? It auto mutes you when you join. So if you're talking, we can't hear you. Check, check, mic check 1 2. Hey, there you go.
All right. How's it sound?
Pretty darn good. Got one of those Yetis going. I see.
Yeah, I got a Yeti here and throw. This is my garage gym. I've got we got workers in the house, so I'm in the garage.
Right on.
I love COVID and improvising. I It's freaking cool out here. So this will be fun. I can zoom in a little bit on me if you want me closer, or we leave it with this type of backdrop.
Right on. The final product is just audio only.
Oh,
Mainly I stream so that I've got a backup if
okay.
Zoom fails on me. And also that way you can see that I'm a real live human being.
Yeah,
That's always
it's much easier to talk. So if it's just audio, I might just move closer to you.
yeah, no worries.
If it's just audio.
Yeah,
Let me get
whatever.
another jacket then, because I'm fucking cold. Hold on a second. All right.
And
Even better.
where is here for you?
I'm in SoCal.
All right, on. So that's
Yeah.
got to be what, like 78 degrees cold for you
Uh,
right now?
it's actually 63 today,
All
and,
right.
and so for and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I grew up in Canada. I'm formerly from Canada, and here I am complaining about like 63-degree winter, and but it's weird when I used to travel and visit because I came here for years. You know, just like business, all the martial art magazines and stuff, are out in California. So I've been coming here since 1980, and it'd be sometimes I come in the winter. And as a Canadian, I'd be wearing like shorts and a t-shirt, and I'd see people walking around with North Face jackets on and stuff. And I'm like, what is wrong with these people? It's like so. And now I understand. You just acclimate, and I get up and I'm like freezing today.
Yeah, your set point definitely adjusts. But for me, dude, I grew up in North Carolina, went to college
Okay.
at Kentucky, summers in Fort Lauderdale and Miami, then moved to Orlando after college, lived in Austin for 7 years. I got tired of sweating and then
Huh.
said, screw it, I'm going to Chicago where I'll be comfortable forever. And it's fantastic.
Well, it's that's a great city, and I love visiting there. And the I can't remember the name of the restaurant now, but I was there for a tactical conference, and I went to this kind of well known steakhouse, and it was just insane. It was just insane. But that's one of the things that um, I love traveling, and I love good food, and I've been on the road now since 1993, and before it was fashionable to be a like a seminar guy and everything. I was doing that. That's how I cut my teeth in the industry, just traveling all over. So
Right.
all I would do is I'd go teach, and I'd find a good restaurant and then go to bed.
Yeah, that's great. So that's kind of my background, and I'll give you some context for what in the hell this kind of Mind Reader University is all about. So after college, I was the tour manager of a full time magician and performer. But my background is being a magician for my whole life and specializing in mind reading tricks,
Okay.
and that was it. So I was a touring mind reader. After being
Wow.
the tour manager, I learned the business from him of how to do it, and then traveled around entertaining college kids and Fortune 500 companies, all that jazz. But the most common thing that I would get after doing one of my mind reading shows was, "Did you go to college for this stuff?"
Ah,
And eventually I said, screw it, I'll just make my own. And then that's what
right.
Mind Reader University came into. And I was like, this would be perfect for it to be a podcast and just kind of pick the brains of smart and cool people. All right. And then that's kind of how it all got
And it's and
started.
it's but do you actually do like classes on mind reading? Like Mind Reading University actually has some online courses and digital content and
Kind
live
of,
shit,
yeah, because I always keep it within hand's reach.
right?
Think Like a Mind Reader is
Wow.
the book that I wrote about the, like, on stage, it's all just applied psychology, showmanship, and just having the moxie to pull these shenanigans off. It's
Right.
really all it is. Biggest opportunities I've ever had just came from, hey, can I work for you? And they're like, yeah, why not? Okay,
Right.
boom. So all the applied psychology I use on stage, I realized I was using in my personal life and business life and thought, oh, this is useful because not everybody thinks like me. And then I just packed it all into the book.
Good for
So
you, man.
the conceit is, yeah, you learn how to communicate so well that it looks like you could read minds, but I don't claim genuine psychic powers, just phenomenally good communication skills.
The operative word, the most important thing is that moxie. Like, if you don't believe in yourself, why would anyone else? Dan Millman, who wrote the book The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, I don't know if you ever read that. It's an old school book where
Yeah.
but one of his quotes is not from the book, but one of his quotes is if you face just one opponent and you doubt yourself, you're outnumbered. And I always love it. I share that in every seminar. You doubt yourself and you face one opponent and you doubt yourself, you're outnumbered. And the you got to believe in yourself. And there's so many people in this why, of everything you said, it was that this idea, the moxie to go up to somebody and just go. And I've done some big deals like that where I'm nervous, my heart is pounding, and I go up to the person and I go, hey, what would be involved in us doing a long-term contract to do this and train your people in this way? And the answer 99% of the time is like, oh, we can do that. It's like nobody just ever asked. It's just
Right.
like no one had asked, right? So kind of crazy. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a big reason why I wanted to reach out to you is you have come up with some of the most pithy, compact ways of communicating some really tough ideas. Kind of
Mm,
like the you are your own first responder. Like that one stuck with me too. I was just like, man, that is brutally true.
right.
And the podcast that you've got, the No Fear podcast, is super interesting to me because part of the biggest thing that holds you back is that fear. And that's a big part of what I wanted to dig into is the way that fear shows up at basically every level of your life, because you've got the startle response, you've got the flinch, you've also got the worried and talking against yourself. Then you've got the, well, I'm worried they're going to cheat on me, or whatever that kind of
Sure.
more and more abstract levels of fear are. Most people make most of their decisions from that place. So I wanted to set you loose and talk about all that kind of mental stuff that shows up at your base layer all the way up.
Yeah, absolutely. And my middle name is it's a weird middle name. It's Stream of Consciousness Tangent Man. It's a short middle name, but so feel free to rescue me if I go too deep. And
Right on.
and people will go like, wow, that's a deep rabbit hole, and I'm going, no, no, that's not even the rabbit hole.
Right.
We didn't even
That's
start yet.
entryway one for 11
Right.
others. Yeah.
Right. So and feel free, anything, just jump in and throw stuff at me. In fact, you know, I've had the opportunity to be on a ton of podcasts, and a lot of times people go, "Well, what questions can't I ask you?" And I'm going, like none.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
just ask whatever you want, right? And what do you not want to talk about? Whatever. But you said something there. Like, most people know me as like this martial arty self defense guy, and I try to describe what I do as not a martial art, that we're not learning complex motor skills. Everything we do is brain based. It's reverse engineered from what, like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, point of view, which is, hey, what's the bottom rung on that? It's
Mm.
survival. Like, how do we continue to procreate? How do we, And so in exploring what real survival was, I had to study fear, violence, and aggression. And in studying fear, violence, and aggression, I realized that so much of what we thought we could do, as far as I'll get really good at this, right? And so to come back to your example, you know, you can get really good at magic, but if you're afraid to perform in front of people, you're not very good at magic. And particularly the avenue that you went into, like the mind reading, as you eloquently put, like the applied psychology, it's getting people to reveal the answer, or you to suggest the answer, in a combination of that, and you're in a positive, entertaining way manipulating behavior. And uh and I realized, like, that's what self-defense is. I need to manipulate my behavior, because my real behavior is I'm fucking scared and I don't want to be here. But if I can't accept where I am, I'm not going to be able to protect myself or my family. I also, in developing the system, realized, and this was kind of a cool epiphany, and that is, uh, I would tell people, you can't match the adrenaline dump of a sudden attack. It's just impossible. So it's not like if you and I agree to fight a boxing match or an MMA match, there's consent, there's preparedness, there's awareness, and that totally changes behavior, because I know where I'm supposed to be and what weight class and who I'm fighting. I might even have film of you so I can start visualizing. But during real violent encounters, sudden violence, we don't know who the attacker is. It's sudden, and it impacts our physiology and our psychology in a way that our executive function, right, our cognitive thinking skills, are hijacked by danger and fear and physiology. And of course, I didn't know any of this shit, because I was like everyone else, Bruce Lee junkie, learning how to do martial arts, learning how to do stuff. And then when I would be in it, when I would experience a confrontation, my heart would be racing, or I'd hear like the voice in my head, oh, this guy's gonna fucking kill you, he's big, like, well, shit, don't do this, don't do this, like, leave now, leave now. And at certain ages, it's ego and pride that keeps you in a confrontation. At other ages, it's just this, like, this freeze factor if you're untrained and the threat is significant enough. And over a period of about 13 years, from 1977 to 1993, I was like teaching a ton of stuff. And I had a school, and we were doing scenarios. And this was my incubator, this was my laboratory. And and I recognized something. We were doing force on force scenarios. I like to tease people, like, I had created a mini Fight Club before Fight Club was a movie and anyone even thought about that. We'd get together once a month and like beat the shit out of each other. We'd film it with most of your listeners don't know what VHS is, but Google VHS. Uh, and we would film that and look back at that. We do like 3-on-1s and 1-on-1s and 6 versus 4, and we would talk about hypothetically, like, what would happen here. And it never looked like what we choreographed in our hallucination and our imagination. And so, the hard thing for the fantasy martial artist is, and listen, I love a John Wick movie, I love a Bruce Lee movie, I love all that in between. But I learned at a young age, in my 20s, I'm 60 now, that, like, that's just not how it goes down in the street. And the good guys don't look good, and the bad guys don't look good. It's just a mess. And I was fascinated with, when I was doing these force on force scenarios, Jonathan, I was fascinated with, why could a certain scenario render a trained person not helpless, but like if somebody had trained for 6 years, why did it look like they had not even trained for 6 minutes in the scenario? And it came back to, and I always tell people now, like years later, I can explain it more elegantly than I did back then. But I tell people, like, on game day, everything's mental. On game day, you can't YouTube a new skill set, right? Like, the guy's punching you in the face, you can't pause him, go to YouTube and go like defense from the right.
Right.
On game day, everything is mental. And I realized that, uh, looking back into the 80s, when I was looking at the scenarios, And I remember saying this to myself, going, wow, this is such a powerful line. The people who managed their fear managed to fight. The people who managed their fear managed to fight. And pithy lines like that, where you go, wow, that's kind of cool. What does that mean? The big reframe that I had to do for the industry, and still continue to this day, it's frustrating, is that when you train a certain way, you have an unconscious bias that it's going to play out that way. And so if I say to somebody, hey, listen, don't confuse technical with tactical, those moves aren't going to work in a real violent encounter, they're like, hey, what the fuck did you just say? It's almost like a religious
How
defensiveness.
dare you?
Right. And then they'll spend hours trying to prove that by showing you like what I call like a unicorn event, where like, here's a guy that did a kick, or here's a guy that did like a back kick, and here's a guy that did this choke. But I go, but of the millions of confrontations around the world, you found one and a half. That's surely, those aren't good statistics to base your future safety on.
Yeah.
And then I tell people, because like most of my audience are trainers. Most of the work we do are train the trainers, defensive tactics trainers, combatives trainers, and martial artists who teach self-defense. And I tell them, look, just because you can do it doesn't mean your students can do it. In fact, one of the slides in our instructor development course is don't show your student what you can do, show them what they can do. If you've gotten really good at something, you need to be self-aware enough to know, am I a unicorn? And I was actually talking about this today with a buddy of mine who's a wickedly successful entrepreneur. And we were talking about flow state and research on flow and all this. And I said, the problem with all of that, and I love the research and I love the neuroscience, my whole system is entirely brain-based. We'll do blocks on myelinization of neurotransmitters, all the way to how body language is 60% of communication, and how you can distract and redirect people by hand gestures and movements. And so we have a whole system of nonviolent postures. We have a verbal de-escalation protocol that uses ideas from empathy, conscience, and accountability, rapport building. The idea being that if you and I are going to fight, Jonathan, you and I are about to fight, and I go, Jonathan, wait a minute, don't hit me a second. Let me tell you a joke. And I tell you a funny joke, and you laugh, and then you go, okay, man, we got to fight. My theory is that if I made you laugh, you can't hit me as hard as when I didn't make you laugh. That something changes in your physiology and therefore your relationship with me. So we go so deep intuitively into behavior. In fact,
I love
while
that.
I'm on one of my 9 tangential stories,
I've got a couple rabbit holes that I'm going to push you towards, but I want to see where this one goes too.
Yeah, it just made me pop in the head. I've got a couple of therapists who trained, they're professional therapists, 20 years in the industry, who train with me to study my system, because they found that my research on fear management creates better results. Then one of the quotes is on I've got one of the verticals of my company is coaching entrepreneurs and business people of mine, because a lot of people, if you're in I don't want to know anything about guns, I don't want to know anything about
violence is icky,
self-defense, right? But there's a whole other side to what we do on the whole no fear, KNOW, fear, knowing fear and changing your relationship with fear. But Jeff DeTessa, the psychologist out from Connecticut, he has a bias, a specialty working with vets with PTSD. And he says, he calls me up one day, he said, you're not going to believe this, but your cycle behavior and fear management protocols are more effective with this demographic than anything I've learned in 20 years of psychology. And I was like, can I use that as a quote, man? He goes, fuck yeah, like it's true. So it's just super, super interesting that in my quest, listen, I abhor violence. I want to make that really clear. And it's an interesting thing, because people think of me as like, oh, he's a knuckle-jagger. He likes to fight. He likes violence. And I go, I abhor it so much. That's why I study it, and that's why I practice it. And in the in the quest to truly understand that and make people safer. In fact, I probably care more about other people's safety than they do.
Right. That's
Which
actually the rabbit hole I wanted you to go
okay.
down, which
Yeah.
is you touched on it a little bit about how it's an important reframe and that the industry is still resistant to it. That's a hint to me that you're onto something good because if I promote myself as a magician or as a mentalist even, people go, my uncle did stupid magic tricks that I hated. This guy does tricks. I hate him. And
Right.
that the way I present myself automatically locks me into their box of assumptions.
Right.
So instead,
There's
I'm
their
a
bias.
business
Yeah.
consultant that helps my clients connect with their audience. Now that's
Nice.
super valuable. So,
Right.
in terms of people going, "Oh, violence is icky," this, and that, for reasons why they should ignore you, the work that you're doing is incredibly important. That could empower them to survive situations that are, on the whole, likely.
Right.
So, with the importance of the work that you're doing and the value of the research you've done, how effective it is, you know you've got the secret sauce that could literally change somebody's mind and help save their life.
Right.
But how do you get that across to people of, listen, man, I care more about your well-being than you do
Right.
because right now you're being an idiot. I'm
Right.
literally the world's best at what I do, and you don't give two shits that I'm trying to save your life. How do you
If
deal with that?
yeah, so it's very frustrating to me. And if I got to that point, in right now, if I felt like I was getting that point, I would, that's the client I fire, or the client I didn't ever sign to, I would fire. In other words, you got to have the self-awareness to go, I'm spinning my wheels here. This is like not going anywhere. You brought up a couple of really interesting things is, how do you present and how do you reframe what you do? Because if everybody goes, oh, all self-defense is right, then like you go, hey, I'm a magician, they know my day. Hey, speaking of magicians, do you know the comedian Nate Bargatze?
Nate Bargatze, the name does ring a bell.
I gotta send you this skit he does. Jess, what's the name of that album, the clown album, where he does this bit where his dad's a clown, or no, he comes from his dad was a magician and stuff like that.
Nice.
It's hysterical. You'll really appreciate it. But it speaks to that. So, one of my favorite stories, and you may have heard it, you may not, but your listeners probably didn't. And that is, years ago, I'm coming home from LA on a red eye flight. And this is this is how old this is. This is like Walkman days. You guys remember Walkman, the disc, and there's no iPads. It's I've got books, actually reading books, and I love books. I got 3 books on me, and I'm sitting, and the seat beside me is empty, and I'm like, holy shit, this is so exciting. I put my books out. I got my Walkman out. I got my headphones in. It's 11:55. It's a 12:05 flight. And I'm like, yes. And I'd been upgraded too. I did, like, I was so
You got the
excited. They
full
bumped,
suite for
they
for a
bumped
road
me.
warrior. These are big
Yeah,
details. Like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
know how, like, that feeling. You're like, it's gonna take off and this seat's empty. Yes.
Right. And you're in business class, like
Yeah.
because you got bumped, right? And I'm like, yes. And at 11:55, in comes, like, running in, a flight attendant, not working the flight. Clearly, she's like sweating, but and she runs right over to the seat, like she knows the aircraft. She goes, yeah, I'm sitting right there. And inside I go, oh, fuck, okay. And I smile at her. I grab my books. I stick it behind, the little pocket there. I might put my Walkman in there. She sits down. She's got the window seat, and she looks out and she looks back, and you can tell she's like full of adrenaline because she just ran. And she looks at me and she goes, hi. And I could take my headphones out and I go, hey. And she goes, She goes, so I'm so excited I didn't miss this flight. I didn't want to stay here. I would have had to get a hotel. This is not my hub. And I'm going, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, she's full of adrenaline. She's going to talk to me the whole flight. She's really chatty, you know. And it's like, if I see somebody with headphones on, I'm not saying anything to them.
It's the
Unless
international
it's like,
symbol for leave me alone.
right. Even like I think you and I should come up with decoy headphones. They're like they're just pretend headphones. Um, and um, and so she says, so obviously I'm a flight attendant. You can see, and she's got the uniform on. She points at her name, and she goes, "What do you do?" And I'm like wearing torn jeans and a t-shirt, right? Tattoos. And I look at her, and without missing a beat, I go, "I'm a life extension insurance salesman." And she says, "Oh, sorry, I just screwed up the whole story." I go, "I'm a life insurance salesman." I'm so distracted. I'm so distracted here working in the garage here. We got people coming in and out and workers outside and stuff like that. But she says, "What do you do?" I said, I said, "I'm in life insurance," thinking, who wants to talk about life insurance as you're taxiing down a runway? And she looks me up and down. She goes, "You're not a life insurance salesman." And then I say the line that I just said that I blew the story. I go, "You're right. You got me. I'm a life extension insurance." And she says, "Life extension insurance, what is that?" I said, "Well, it's a funny way to say I teach self-defense." She goes, "Oh my God, I always wanted to know how to defend myself." And I look at her and I go, "No, you didn't. People who always wanted to know how to do something, do it." I think what you meant to say, if I can put words in your mouth, and I'm secretly, consciously trying to irritate her, so she just goes and turns away
Right.
and just let me go to sleep. Oh, it's a red eye flight. And I go, "I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I think what you meant to say was you always wanted to know how to never be near a situation where you might have to defend yourself." And Jonathan, she looks at me and she goes, "Oh my God, yes." And and so in that moment, I don't know why the story popped into my mind, but if you can imagine, it was again me searching for ways to communicate to people, not using the typical narrative where they go, "Oh, I do martial arts too. I did self defense too," or "I did," because you've got people who are fatalists who go, "Oh, if I study that, I'm going to attract violence."
Right.
Really?
Right.
So if you take a first aid course, you're going to attract injury, right? What is it? If you put your seatbelt on, you're going to attract a car accident. Like
Right. And
people,
and even in another weird way, I bet you $5 that was the beginning of where you started appreciating all the lead up to the event. That's another huge red flag to me. My interest in martial arts began early on in my life when my best friend, we were exactly the same height, exactly the same weight and build. And then one day we're in his front yard and he goes, "Punch me." I was like, "All right." So I just haul
huh,
off and punch him. And then the sky and the ground do this weird dance. And then suddenly I'm looking straight up at the sky. I was like, "What the hell just happened?" He had been taking karate and he did one of his little karate throws on me. I was
right,
like, "This is awesome." So that was
right,
kind of where I got interested. And then everybody talks about the fighting, the throwing punches, the kicking, the screaming, the ki, everything, except all the 10 minutes that
right,
leads up to the fight and
yeah,
all the shit you could do ahead of that to not get into the moment of truth.
yeah.
Everybody talks
That, that
self-defense
that
and then
that's
they
that's a
focus on
great
the fighting.
that's a great line. I'll tell you two things. One is, um, you know, I'm an aggressive athlete. I do most of my work as military law enforcement training. We do tons of force on force. I wrestled as a kid. I did taekwondo. I boxed. I dabbled in all martial arts. When one of my students lost a fight when he was 15 and I was 20, it bothered me so much. And I tell the story where like it was like the god of self-defense hit me with a lightning bolt, and I had this epiphany that we teach self-defense wrong, and it had to come from a scenario. But in order for you to navigate a dangerous scenario, you had to have a directive, and the directive can't be throw a punch at me, you know, because it is as cool as that moment was for you. There are certain people where I'll tell you a real story I had with a guy who wouldn't back down. I was trying to diffuse it, and I had my hands up in a nonviolent posture, and I could hear my instructor. I was a teenager at the time. My Taekwondo instructor, who I deeply respected, said, "Hey, listen, martial arts is only used in true self-defense. If I catch or hear of any of you using it to instigate, you're out of the school. You're banned." And I loved it so much. It was like it was really, that was, I went as if there was classes 6 days a week, I went 6 days a week. I'd roll out of bed, I'd be doing push-ups and hitting things on the way to the bathroom. Loved it. Total fanatic. And so that was, getting kicked out of the school was more scary than the fight in high school. And so this kid misinterprets something that happened in the class. Teacher wasn't there, and he thinks I was involved in knocking him over, and some kids played a practical joke on him, and he comes after me because I was laughing like all the other assholes in the class. And he's like, "Fuck you, Blauer." And he's like, and I got my hands up, and this is 5 years before I actually started teaching, like almost full time. And before I'd put together a holistic 3-dimensional self-defense system. Up until then, I was doing what everyone does, is we regurgitate what our instructor tells us. If you go to somebody who teaches you how to box, your unconscious bias is boxing. If you go to Taekwondo, your unconscious bias is Taekwondo. If you're doing jiu-jitsu, your unconscious bias is jiu-jitsu. If I say to a jiu-jitsu guy, you're at an ATM machine, and a guy says, "Give me your wallet," and you have to fight, what are you going to do? He's not going to say, "I'm going to hit him with an uppercut." He's going to say, "I'm going to take him down and choke him out." If you ask a boxer, "What are you going to do?" and he goes, "I got to do something," he's not going to say, "I'm going to double leg the guy and put a rear strangle on him." He's going to say, "I'm going to hit him with a left to the body and drop," right? So the unconscious bias is cool, but this is super, super deep. And your unconscious actually impacts your true situational awareness. The unconscious bias is the narrative. Now you're looking for something to happen so you can use the shit that you invested in. And
That
it's
is a
very
direct one-to-one correlation to the world of magic. Straight up.
crazy, right?
Yeah.
I knew you'd dig that.
Yeah. That's exactly
It's
what happens.
and when you know that, you can just lead anyone anywhere. The problem is this: what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to empower people. If you're your own, you got to be your own bodyguard. You're the first responder in your fight. If you don't understand that your self-awareness informs your actual cognitive situational awareness, then you can't realize you're the guy that goes, "I don't even know what happened. How did he get that close?" It's because you have blinders on, but those blinders aren't really blinders. They're unconscious bias. If you don't realize you're arrogant or you're an asshole or you're prejudiced or you're conceited, you go, "Every Friday night I get in a fight. I don't understand what the problem is." Well, I'll tell you, let me share this mirror with you, asshole. Right? You've got, and so a big thing we do, it's very holistic, is we teach people about this self-awareness connection. And you said something earlier about reframing stuff, is like, and that everyone wants to do that the gun disarm, then the knife disarm, how do you get over a headlock? So probably 5 or 6 years ago, I said, we've got to redefine self-defense. And right now, people want to learn. People go, "Hey, I'll teach you how to fight." And when people say to me, "Hey, I need you to teach my kid how to fight," or "You need my wife how to fight," I go, "I'm going to teach her how to not fight. I'm going to teach you how to not fight," for a couple of reasons. One, I wrote this article years ago called "The Economics of Violence," and the gist of it was that no matter how wealthy you are, emotionally, psychologically, or financially, you can't afford to be attacked. That when you are attacked, your family's attacked, your business is attacked. If it impacts your self-esteem, your confidence, it can be like, "Oh, what are they?" Like people say, "Hey, what's in your wallet or your purse that's worth your money?" I'm not saying to fight for materialistic stuff. I'm talking about if somebody breaks into your house and you got a friend that goes, "Well, did you have insurance?" And you go, "Yeah." That doesn't change the stain on your brain, how disgusting it feels that some predator was in your house, but also how unsafe you feel. Now, suddenly you're triple checking the door. You hear a sound, you're on. It changes everything in your vibration.
Right, because your
And
fundamental belief is that walls equals safe, and your inner sanctum, well, somebody else didn't share that
right.
illusion, and they totally walked through it, and now you get to live with, I was living a lie.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's and that's one of the reasons I abhor violence. And so, if you Google the definition of self-defense, classic definition when we say the physical act of protecting your property or your life. So even the universal definition of self-defense starts where the attack has already happened. It doesn't discuss situational awareness. It doesn't discuss anything about fear management. So I tell people at the highest level, there's 4 phases to a confrontation that you can't avoid, what I would call a credible threat. One is you need situational awareness. If you have no awareness, you have no chance. So you got to know what to look for. And you got to also understand that energetically. You need to understand, like, and this is a fun one. After, again, I've been teaching 43 years now, and I've taught and interviewed hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of victims of violence, right? When I do seminars all over the world, and I'm making up the math here, half the people are proactive. I want to learn this. And then half the people are, something happened to me or something happened to somebody I know and I heard about you and maybe this will help. And so they're for cathartic reasons. And what I've discovered is this, and it's an insane statistic. 100% of the victims who lived to tell the tale said they had a bad feeling before the attack. So we know now with research that our gut is our second brain and all the nerve endings are in there. But remember when grandma used to say, trust your gut. Well, she didn't know that the vagus nerve ran down the head and went into the stomach, and all of this innervation, all this. But people would say, trust your gut, trust your gut. And what they're talking about is your instincts and intuition and that communication. So 100% of the people I've interviewed and 100% of the people I've written about who lived to tell the tale said they had a bad feeling before the attack. So we know that, but then your self-defense class starts with you in a headlock. And I call this the Star Trek model. And the Star Trek model is this, is like, I make the Star Trek joke because in Star Trek, they had this magic machine, as you know, where you could beam down anywhere. And so I'd say most people practice the Star Trek model where class starts, okay, class, today we're going to do gun disarms. John will hold a gun at my head like this. No, not like that, like this. John, like this with this hand. Good. And you set it up perfectly,
Yep.
right? And then you do the disarm. I saw the most horrible one I've ever seen online today. I'll email it to you after, somebody tagged me in it. But 40,000 views and like going viral, and it's just like, it's insanely bad. But it's Star Trek. It's like I'm going, where's the dissonance? Where's the pre-contact cues? And here's the thing. If I say to you, I don't care if you're a cop, I don't care if you're a soccer mom, I don't care if you're a mentalist. If I say to you, hey, would you like to be in a violent encounter later today? When I put it that way, you're like, yeah, no.
I've looked at my schedule. I've considered my options. I will politely decline. Thank you.
Right. I'm totally booked up for the violent encounter.
I wish I
right?
could make it.
Yeah. Right. So I tell people, what I try to do, listen, I've created a self-defense protocol or prescription that's based on the efficiency of a tactical first aid course. In other words, you can go and from a paramedic or a EMS, get a 4 to 6 hour tactical first aid course, how to do it, how to put it on a tourniquet, CPR, and a whole bunch of other really cool things that actually give you life-saving skills. And you could learn that in 4 or 6 hours. And when people look at me, I go, yeah. So I've created a program called Be Your Own Bodyguard, where in a day, you can learn what is the tantamount equivalence of that. Detect, diffuse, defend, detect and avoid. What are all the things I need to know about self-awareness and situational awareness about getting the hell out of danger? Now I'm stuck. I'm in an elevator. I'm in a parking lot. I'm being followed out to my car. I open the door and there's somebody there. Now I'm in a confined space and an evasion is an option. How do I use verbal de-escalation to shift psychological gears so I can manifest courage? Because this doesn't look like it's going well. But if I understand the moral, ethical, and legal elements of what you do, behaviorally manipulate audiences, my audience now, and this is interesting. It's so surreal. When it's just you, let's go back to the Dan Millman quote. You face just one opponent, you doubt yourself, you're outnumbered. The two audiences, there's you and the bad guy. It's two audiences. It's you watching yourself going, oh, holy fuck. And I tell people, like, it's a movie playing in your mind. And I tell people, in the movie in your mind, are you casting yourself as the victim or some action hero? And you know the whole, like, it's been viral. Joe Rogan made it popular. Be the hero in your story.
Yep.
Most people, when they get stuck in the fear loop, see themselves as the victim.
Yeah.
And they're the producer, they're the director, and they're the screenwriter of a movie in their mind. And I love this acronym. It's an acronym for fear: false expectations appearing real. False expectations appearing real. It's when I'm visualizing a future event that's debilitating me in the present.
See,
I,
that is perfect. So that's another way that dovetails perfectly with how magicians and mentalists interact with reality. So here's the explanation for every single magic trick you'll ever see in your entire life, which is the agent of action creates a context for the audience to make logical assumptions that are later shown to not be true.
nice.
And that's experience design. The agent
Right.
of action is always you creating a context of expecting this outcome for the audience of one, yourself,
Right.
to make logical assumptions that, oh, this guy is big, therefore it is a logical assumption that he is going to beat me.
Right.
And that process is always going. It's just that magicians play with it in a fun, happy environment. The meta
Right.
context is, you know, this is a magic show. You bought the ticket.
Right.
So it's totally cool. But when it's in a violent encounter,
Yeah.
you're not helping yourself by assuming logically that you're going to lose. That's not an assumption
Yeah.
you want to have.
It's that's a great point, and you got me thinking, because I always tell people, like, I go, look, when we're doing our verbal de-escalation, I remind people, you're doing verbal de-escalation. I go, it sounds like a real conversation, but it isn't. It's disinformation. It's got to be true. It could be true. So this is, semantically in sync with the system that I designed for people, because I'm telling them, these are skills you've mastered, like the whole 10,000 reps metaphor.
Yep.
You know, I go, if I teach you a nonviolent posture that's got a Trojan horse element, in other words, I'm using the body language of de-escalation. I'm using that body language to create the illusion that I'm not prepared to defend myself. I'm using the body language, which is 60% of communication, plus the 30% tone, plus the words I choose, empathy, uh, uh, rapport, those ideas, to manipulate the behavior that does two things. One, it allows me to shift psychological gears so I can go, like, catch up to what's happening. I talk about, you've got to recalibrate. When the opportunistic bad guy, um, makes his move, it's like a Jack in the Box moment, where I tell people, I used to carry around Jack in the Box, but it would break from travel, because I'd pull some of the audience and I'd go, okay, the music, right? I go, stand in front of the Jack in the Box, and the lid's gonna pop, and the clown's gonna pop. I said, get ready to fucking finger jab this clown, and everything about it. But when that lid pops, the refractory delay between stimulus and response, you can't finger jab the clown until the clown's head already pops. And so the metaphor here is that in a real fight, if the bad guy, who's the fucking clown, jumps you first, action's always faster than reaction. You can't. So again, crazy rabbit hole here, because when you practice how to get out of a headlock or how to block a punch, like, even you're the first magician. I don't know when you started magic, but the first magician you experienced was your friend flipping you.
Yeah, that's
That
one of the
was,
best magic tricks I've ever experienced.
but what I mean is he set you up, right? If he had said, throw a right hand, I'm going to flip you with this move, you might have thrown a left hand and dropped him, right? So by him making you smile and go, okay, you sure you're ready? Yeah, just fucking hit me. He had already analyzed your body language and move, so he gets it right. And the only way he could do that is if he knew which hand you were going to throw. In other words, he created the context for him. So that was your first magic trick that you stepped into.
Yeah.
But um, it's so fascinating. And I was saying earlier that when I started to look at holistically how people viewed self-defense, it's no wonder people aren't interested, because they see it as just the fighting. And unlike the flight attendant, where I said, no, you actually want to know how to never be near a situation because you're a good Samaritan who doesn't want to experience violence. And when I realized how potent and profound that was, that's when I embarked on really um, creating this holistic three-dimensional approach: detect and avoid, defuse and de-escalate, and a push comes to shove, defend, making sure that it was morally, ethically, and legally sound. But I couldn't just have lip service for the first three stages. It couldn't be, guys, head on, and this is what happens. You hear this all the time on Instagram posts: head on a swivel. Situational awareness is everything. And now let me show you a gun disarm. It goes right from some Zen fortune cookie simplicity to the Star Trek model.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's I tell people, like, it's hard to choose courage. And I always tell people, fear is contagious, but so is courage. Choose courage. And you can practice courage. There's ways to practice courage. You don't have to wait till you're in an active shooter event to practice courage. You can practice, because what courage is courage is using fear as a fuel to ignite the decision to do the right thing. I always tell people, intuition whispers in your ear, and then your own fear shuts that down. You should say this now. You should do this now. It could be a career choice. It could be asking somebody on a date. It could be standing up for something. And you go, we got to stop that. Do something. Nah. And then another narrative shuts it down. It all, when you peel everyone's onion, I really believe it comes down to fear and your relationship with fear.
Yeah. I was standing just off stage, or as just as they were introducing me to go out for national television. And that's a scary moment, knowing I'm going to have 12 cameras on me and somebody that I don't know set up my props. So there's so much about this that I don't have control over.
Right.
And I could be freaked out. And instead I just go, this is what you do. This is what you've
Right.
chosen to do. You want this. And I was like, I want this. And then you
Right.
go out and you have a great time. There's another detail about that you mentioned about the Trojan horse posture, about appearing de-escalating while being prepared if it doesn't de-escalate. The only
Yes.
way that you're going to have that proper posture is if you understand what the real plaintive posture looks like. And that's what magicians do, is first you have to study reality perfectly
Nice.
before you can make a believable illusion of reality.
Right.
And the other analogy is painting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, man. Jonathan, I love that. Because I tell people when we're doing stuff, um, we teach four foundational nonviolent postures, and each nonviolent posture is congruent with a different type of de-escalation. And one of the assignments I give people in our garage gym class is I tell them, hey, I want you to make to with somebody who's known you for a long time. I want you to have a conversation with them and change your nonviolent posture throughout the conversation. And if they look at you and they go, what the fuck are you doing? Then you suck. I want you to blend in so that you're literally like, they don't know that you're doing something. And I tell people, what you're doing is you're replicating reality. And the word we talk about all our scenarios. When we do our scenario-based training, we replicate reality. So this is like so synchronous with what you're talking about as it, and it, this is very informational, educational, for me too, hearing about your side of that kind of research and development. Because one of the things we do this an exercise called emotional climatization. And what you're doing is you're doing slow motion attacks. So you're training your brain at a metacognitive level, and we're identifying your auditory, visual, and pre-contact cues, and you're doing it in slow motion, and you're narrating it, and then you're verbally inserting when you could move and when you would do stuff. So what you're doing is it's this brain-based experience where tell people like your brain is a hard drive, but it's also always trying to predict the future. And what's so cool about that for you as a magician, and we've never met, never even talked about this, is there are some people in your audience that just want to have a good time. So they're like the easiest person to fool. But there's a lot of people in there that are trying to fuck up the trick. And so you need to be so amazing at your research. And then in a way, if you're confident enough, those are the most fun people to mess up. Because you know what they're doing too. They don't have their, and I always tell people, I'm going to try and, one of my things in my classes, I'll say, I'm going to try and fool you and distract you right now by adopting a nonviolent posture that you've never seen. So don't let me try to guess what that's going to be. Try to anticipate that. And when we're doing these things, there's always like a sudden attack or some sort of movement, right? And they're so easy to catch there because they'll be like, I'll go, okay, stop. You realize that your situational awareness is so compromised now because I got you to think about something you've never even seen. So you're so microscopically trying to think about what's he going to do, that you can't see what I just did. You've already been stabbed. You've already been shot. You've already been attacked. And it blows people's minds, but I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is like, but I also at the same time, we're having fun, this banter back and forth. You made the joke early on, real violence isn't funny. It's very fucking scary. And so, we're not at all cavalier about it. But it's just, you need to understand that there's an inner voice in your head that has to help you navigate the confrontation. And at the same time, you need to manipulate the behavior of the attacker.
Yeah.
And there's many ways to do that.
Yeah. So how do you, context for this question, the lead up, the first job that I had after college, I moved to Orlando and worked at a magic shop in Universal Studios. I sold magic tricks to tourists from all over the world. I loved that job. It was phenomenal. Right. And then there's this thing that I now call the 5 stages of grief for amazement, which is I do this magic trick. It is stunning. Everybody in the audience is just blown away, and everybody goes, man, I got to know how that works. It is so incredible that several people pay $50 to learn the trick.
Right.
So then, if it's slow, you know what? Let me teach you guys. I'll teach you how it works, and then that way you'll have some one-on-one training. So here we go. You show them how it works, and instantly they're burdened with the knowledge of how it works, and their mind can't think outside that context. Once they know how it works, they go, that'll never fool anybody.
Right.
That won't ever fool a single human being. And then I go, it just fooled 20 people, and then 5 of you to pay $50 worth. Like, it works, man.
Right.
So it's the 5 stages. The disbelief, like, no, that can't be it. Bargaining. No, it has to be something else. Then anger, which is, I bet you think I'm an idiot for believing that. Then depression, you're like, I guess I am an idiot. And then finally acceptance of, I guess it is kind of cool. I could practice. Maybe I could do that trick too. So how do you deal with the burden of knowledge of beforehand? It's all fun and wow, this is so well thought out and incredible, and I've got so much to learn. You teach people how essentially simple this is because it's already baked into our lizard brains anyway.
Right.
They go through the course and then they go, I could have figured this out. Like,
Yeah.
why? How do you
The
how do you do that?
Yeah. So the Good Samaritan is never goes through your five stages of the magic, the Schopenhauer's version of that whole thing, and then it's
Yeah.
finally accepted as true. The only people, I'll throw a little dig out here to the frauds and the IP thieves. The only people that have a negative reaction to this are the people who suffer with greed and ego and want to be the guy that figured it out. So every decade,
That
every
is a
decade,
remarkable insight. Man,
thank you.
that's brutal.
So every decade, I have somebody that I mentor who breaks away and goes, "I could have figured it out," because it's based on physiology, physics, and psychology, and you know, and that's like stealing the recipe for some organic shampoo and going, well, because it's made from plants in nature, I could have figured it out. You still stole the fucking, recipe, asshole. And so there's a bunch of people who've done that with me. And I don't want to turn this into like it's not meant to be dark. It's just the only people that go, oh, I could have figured this out. The only people that do that are the people that didn't figure it out who wish they had. Everyone else I teach goes, thank God it's so simple. Thank God that I could do this if I'm woken up at 3 a.m. and something's happening. Remember, most of my clients are actually protectors, public safety professionals, and they're used to stuff not working. So this is a breath of fresh air. Someone comes in and says, put your foot here, step here, do this, flip here. And then when they get into a violent encounter, like, it doesn't work. And so when I come in and show them what we call Hicks Law compliant, that I can go from a nonviolent posture. If you move suddenly, it bypasses my cognitive brain. My startle flinch kicks in, picked up by my reactive brain. And what it does is it triggers a startle flinch, which is the equivalent of nature's organic airbag. My hands drive out towards the threat, almost like an airbag inflating in front of the threat. And nobody'd ever thought about that relationship, that visual, or reverse engineered a bunch of drills. It just so happens that when your fingers splay and your arms drive out, the extensor chain connects, and you get the maximum muscle recruitment in your body. It's a core to extremity explosion, and it's super strong for whether you're male, female, young, old. Obviously there's limits. I don't want to say like this is even 18-month-old babies can get. I'm not like, let's not be silly.
Self-defense for toddlers.
Right, exactly. And so the movement is amazing when people learn it. And then when I go, hey, check this out. I'm in a nonviolent posture. My hands are up, my fingers are splayed, my arms are slightly outside 90. I know this position because it's priming the airbag. And if this person does something crazy, that airbag's going to deploy. I'm good to go. And then I go, now check this out. Try to tackle me. Boom, it deploys, it stops a tackle. Throw a left hook or right hook. It intercepts that. Headbutt me. Boom. Grab me, shove me up against the wall. It interferes with everything. It's like all of a sudden, if I had, like those big, like a Swiss ball, one of those balance balls, like, imagine if you had an invisible one and somebody came to attack you and you could just go, and the ball was right there. They would bounce off it. Now this sounds cartoony on an audio, presentation. You'd have to see, and you could guys, I'll send you some links so people can see some visuals of the stuff. But the idea is it's a primal gross motor movement that like you said, it's burned into your lizard brain. It's how people, I make the joke, I tell people this is like caveman kung fu. Back in the day when cavemen would fight, They didn't have a kung fu. There wasn't like, hey, hey, you're finished school. Where are you going? I'm going to caveman karate, mom. Like there was no karate school. How did people fight? Well, they used primal gross motor movement. They threw rocks, they sharpened wood and turned that into spears. And it was all this quarter extremity movement. So this is like reclaiming this, like really going, hey, you know, what would your body do prior to any training in a sudden violent encounter? And I looked at all of those aspects and what they were running, they were hiding, they were pushing away danger, our hands are going, and I figured out a way to weaponize the startle flinch. And then to take that movement and realize that when I'm pushing away danger, my fingers are splaying intuitively, that if I started to look at my hand, then suddenly what I had was the same kinetic chain as a palm strike. That if I hit with my forearm or my elbow, I could really, create some impact and knock danger away. And all of these things lead into, depending on your profession, your occupation, is it a stun and run? Right? Like somebody's trying to mug you and you hit them and you break contact, or are you a police officer where someone tries to hit you and now you're on the inside and your job is to take them down and control them and handcuff them. So we figured out all of these connections, and we lovingly say, and so the system's actually called the SPEAR system. And SPEAR is an acronym for spontaneous protection, enabling accelerator response. Spontaneous protection meaning the startle flinch, accelerator response by weaponizing the startle flinch, recognizing that it is an organic airbag. It's the fastest thing that your body mind can do because it bypasses cognition. When you learn a complex motor skill, you keep it in your memory bank. And you go, oh, if he does this, I'll do that. And these are all theoretical answers. What would you do? What would you do? Like if I ask your friend, what would you do if I threw a right hand? You go, well, I do this hip throw. I did it, Jonathan, like 30 years ago. I can do it now. But the problem is, in the real violent encounter, like you said earlier, when someone goes to a magic show, it's not a surprise magic show. It wasn't like, hey, I'm in a movie theater. I'm expecting to see a Western and a guy's on stage, cutting somebody in half. What's going on? Like, and you're really confused. You show up, you paid, but in a violent encounter, you didn't sign up for that. And so the biggest thing that I've seen, like observing the industry, not just, so I've got different tiers. I've got the people we teach who are like the end user, the good Samaritans, but we also teach the professionals. So watching the professionals out there is they all start from the Star Trek model. They start from the headlock or the gun grab or the tackle or the lapel grab or whatever the moves are. And the problem is that real confrontations don't start there. But the bigger one, the deeper one that nobody really talks about is that the first place you're attacked in a violent encounter, if you remember my stat of interviewing victims of violence, everyone that lived to tell the tale said they had a bad feeling before. So the first place you're attacked is in your gut. Your intuition says something's wrong. And most people in the modern world, like if we were 100 years ago and you and I were out like in the forest, like looking for food or hunting or looking for wild berries, and you turned to me and went, something's wrong, we'd be getting ready to fight or run.
Yep.
We wouldn't be texting or doing a selfie or I don't know if you know the name Jack Donovan. He wrote a fantastic treatise called Violence is Golden. And you should read it. It's fascinating. But he had me on his show about 5 years ago, and I was explaining some of, he asked me why are people so apathetic? And I said about, this comes back to your original question, like why don't, like how do you reframe somebody to understand, so you don't say, hey, I'm a magician, want to hire me? It's like, what can I say that's going to at least create a deeper conversation? And I said, because they live in a bubble. Because when we started getting militias and building castles and walls, people got soft. It was like, hey, there's bad guys out there. Are you going to do anything? But there was a time in our not too long ago history where you and I knew how to hunt. We knew which mushrooms you could eat and which ones you better not eat, right? And so when we wean that out of us, we lost some of that like survival instinct and skills. And why I mentioned Jack is he said what you're saying is people have outsourced their safety, and I love that line. I always share it.
That's great.
We as a community have outsourced our safety. We go, let's defund the police, and then immediately we're like, hey, 911, yeah, there's some asshole outside my like, right? So
Yeah. And what I like about the approach is that you aren't replacing you aren't replacing that complacence with more fear and uncertainty and the gotta be head on a swivel and you gotta be jumping at every single noise. It's not paranoia that you're promoting. It's understanding the real mechanisms of how these things work to be able to recognize the pattern earlier to give yourself
yeah,
more time to deal with it, which back in the day, if we were out hunting, we would be way dialed in to every single thing, but it wouldn't be that
yes.
we were afraid of every single thing. We're just much more aware because we've got to.
Yeah, 100%. Back then, I call it the three I's: instincts, intuition, and intelligence. And we've when you're just always on your phone and everything's you know you know like, order that, can it be here tomorrow, like, just, we don't have to do anything. You start to dull your instincts, and then your intuition gets shut down. And fear will also shut your intuition down. Remember, I said earlier, intuition whispers in our ear. We've all been screwed in a relationship or a business deal or whatever, and afterwards, there's a moment of clarity where we go, you know what? I knew that guy was going to screw me. I knew this wasn't going to work out. I knew this or that.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
I've seen that happen too because my whole job, I'm not a magician. I don't perform things that can be done with or without an audience. An illusionist, that tiger's going to show up no matter what. I don't care.
right,
The tiger
right,
knows, boom, it's go time. Me, I'm
right,
working with people.
right.
So I brings perfect strangers up on stage, which is an extraordinarily frightening situation for
Sure.
almost everybody. And then they get the deer in the headlights look, and the fear takes over. And then my job is to help them succeed and be present enough, not freaked out, that they can actually listen to the instructions that I'm giving.
Right.
And I've had to learn how to give instructions to a scared person so that they'll hear them. Right. So,
That's great.
so seeing that fear happen in real time to people who are like, yeah, I'm super excited. They get up on
Right.
stage, they turn around and then see the bright lights and nothing else, and it freaks them out. It's like,
Right.
yeah, you got to learn to manage that fear, man.
That's cool. That's funny, man. I can like, I've done a lot of big talks, and I always tell people, like, the number one fear in the world, like, statistically, over and over again, is public speaking. And I remember doing this talk at it was about 30 something years ago at a big university in Montreal, Canada, where I used to live, and amphitheater's filled, so there's maybe like 400 students in there. And I go, what's the number one fear in the world? And everyone yells out, public speaking, sharks, loss of security. I go, okay, those are the top three. And then I say to this, and I'm there to talk about sexual assault. I'm a self-defense guy. And there's these giant TV monitors in this amphitheater. They're not on. And I go, so picture this. You're drunk leaving the university, and now you're being chased down an alley by a couple of guys who are going to, if you're a guy, they're going to sodomize you. If you're a gal, they're going to rape you, and they're going to beat the shit out of you. But you would all rather that happen than come up and make a speech on stage. And you should have seen the teachers. Like, teachers are going, holy shit. Like,
Whoa,
'cause
whoa,
they didn't
whoa.
go, that was my last talk at that university. And
Weird.
and then funny, and then it was like, can we see your speech, please? But what I was trying to explain to people is, like, our number one fear is ridiculous. I said to them, I said, would you rather make a speech on stage or get raped, get dragged to a secondary crime scene? Why isn't the fear of violence against yourself or somebody you care about a major fear. And because it's not, this is this weaning out process. If we go back 200 years and I go, Jonathan, I'm going to go into town. You need to protect your mom and your sisters here, and you're going to have to go out and kill some rabbits because I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. And you're going, Dad, am I going to have to make any speeches while you're gone? Or no, you're like, got it, Dad. I understand. Like, I understand. Right. And, I'd explain to people, I give them a visual, like, you're on the porch of your ranch and 3 marauders come up and you got a black powder rifle and you think of a Western and you're the mom. And like everyone like romanticizes this. I go, don't you think her heart was racing, her butterflies in her stomach, her adrenaline system going crazy, and she's going with a broken voice, get off my land, I will shoot you. In other words, what I try to explain to people is that like we're not being cavalier about this, and that's why I name our fear management program No Fear, KNOW fear. The idea here is like there's no such thing as NO fear. And I was talking about I went off on a tangent and lost my thought, but came back to it. Is I can remember going to this conference, Airline Pilots Association, to talk about passenger rage. This is before 9/11, and I'm in there and I'm talking to the leaders of the 50 different states. They had brought me in, and and we're just talking about things to do and de-escalation strategies and that. And then one of them says, hey, would you talk to the General Assembly as well? This is fascinating. And I'm like, shit, yeah, because they had paid for me to come in and do. Could you stay an extra day? Of course.
You got my time anyway. What else am I going to be doing? Yeah, for sure.
I'm here like this, right? Well, I didn't know that this General Assembly was a big, big deal. And there were going to be 500 people in the audience, and that it was live, and there was going to be CNN and Fox and ABC, and that I'd have an earpiece in my ear, and a producer would be talking to me, as far as like I could get 10 minutes. Okay. And what I explained to people, I called my wife and I said to her, hey, she goes, hey, how's it going? I go, not good. I forgot everything I know. And she's like, what? I go, I got to talk. There's 500 people. It's like live TV. Fucking all the major networks are here. And I have no idea what I'm going to say. And she goes, honey, just start talking. You'll be fine. And I go, no, you don't understand. I am freaking out right now. And she says, do you know how many times you've called me and said the exact same thing before? And I went, really? And so what I try to explain to people is this. There's always an arena or an imaginary opponent that will trigger a fear spike in your body because you are connecting to the false expectations appearing real as opposed to what you need to do. I'm going to share a quote from our course that might save a bunch of you therapy bills. And the line is this. I'm trying to set it up properly here because it kind of segues as part of a presentation, but I'll ask people like, how many of you have been intimidated at some point in your life? And everyone in the audience puts their hand up. I go, all of you have been intimidated by something, right? And they're going, yeah. Well, when does intimidation happen? Does it happen after an event or before? It's always before. But it's always before the events happen. In other words, you're intimidated before anything's even happened. You're intimidated before the fight. You're intimidated before walking on stage. And so then I pop the slide is the psychology of intimidation is when you're visualizing, in our context for self-defense, it's when you're visualizing what the bad guy is going to do to you instead of what you must do to the bad guy. So you're visualizing your jokes are going to flop as opposed to people are going to laugh their asses off. Right? I'm fucking funny. And if they don't get it, it's because they're stupid. What can I say? Right? Whatever you have to say. And so when I called my wife, I had started looking at live TV. What if you fuck up? I put the pressure on me like, hey, what if you're discovered now? What if this is the talk that makes that guy call you? And you start thinking about the future. And so when we're talking about navigating fear, The only time you have fear is when you're thinking about something that happened in the past that was not fun, or you're thinking about something that could happen in the future that is not fun. Fun being, I'm being facetious,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's when you're zen in the moment, let's go, let's do this, right? And understanding that like every effort is a rep, and if you want to get good at anything, you got to do reps, whether it's the magician mentalist, whether it's teaching. I tell everyone, we just graduated 37 people this weekend from an online trainer education and professionals who want to teach our methodology. And I said to them, it's Sunday, this is the worst you will ever be in my system. And if you do a rep tomorrow and then a rep Tuesday, and what will happen is your first fight's your first fight, your 10th fight's your 10th fight. And when you start to get cocky that you're getting really good, life will present you with a new stimulus where you realize, holy shit. But
Yep.
what helps us return to center, Jonathan, is always understanding that when a fear spike happens, I need to turn that fear into fuel. Like I need it to be cathartic. It's got to somehow empower me to go and to lean into the confrontation or conflict. And it's in only doing that that I create more self-awareness, and self-awareness it creates critical thinking.
That's exactly it, right? Because the mentalist parallel is you spend 6 months to a year practicing some sleight of hand that will never be seen by a human being. Like that's the whole goal, is to do something that nobody is ever aware of. What a weird way to spend your time.
That's crazy.
So you spend all that time developing this skill set and to get competent at it, and you're like, yeah, I got this. Then you try the trick on your friend, and just like the nonviolent posture or non-aggressive posture, and trying to sneak that into a friend, your
Right.
friends can spot your sleight of hand because you're doing that weird janky thing
Right. Right.
right. And then you get so nervous about doing this just for your friend that your fear spikes, your hands get sweaty and start shaking, and then you can't even do the stupid sleight in the first place.
Right.
And then you've got to get in front of an audience and do that. Like it's a really cool progression of getting used to being freaked out. And now it's not that I want it to happen, but it's really exciting when I fail on stage,
Hmm.
because I've been in my show 1,000 times.
Right.
The audience, this is the first time they've seen this 3 minutes.
Right.
And I'm bringing 1,000 times more experience to that moment. Of course, I'm going to be better than they are. There's no way that they're going to be able to process orders of magnitude more time in a fraction of a second. So if something goes weird, I'm just like, well, okay, this is unexpected pattern. Now I'm very much in the moment instead of just being on autopilot saying the next thing in the script, and then you kind of wake up in the middle of a routine and you're like, "Oh, did I already say that one thing, or what's going
Huh.
on?" Yeah, it's nice to kind of be in that zen moment of perfectly balanced engagement without freaking out about what you're going to screw up or still worrying about that thing you flubbed at the beginning of the show. Just
But
staying right there.
that's what makes an amazing performer, and creating that live and alive moment is that not just the passion but the obsession of recognizing that this is actually art, and 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 seeing that it's when you start to get complacent and bored and lazy that and it doesn't matter. It's got to be real, and we do that the same thing, in we're doing scenario training, we're using training weapons, and I go, if you don't pretend that this rubber knife is real, then you can't train your brain that is both hard drive and predictor of the future. You can't store the data points in your brain, so God forbid, or whoever you believe in, you get a bad feeling because you're trained in our system that you always we go hashtag choose safety is, and that's actually part of our, one day the definition that we rewrote will hopefully be the one in the dictionary, and it's the decision to choose safety when danger is imminent. The decision to choose safety when danger is imminent, because what that does, instead of it being, again, current definition for those who forgot, the physical act of protecting your property or life. That means Star Trek has already beamed down and the bad guy's on you. But the decision to choose safety when danger is imminent means that I'm going to do the safest thing I can. And that gives me permission to run away, to barricade, to run towards, intercept, and engage. Whatever. What is the safest thing now? The safest thing in certain violent encounters is most of the time just to get the hell out of there, depending on your profession. But now now the definition has also inspired a Socratic relationship with what's going on, and you trying to figure out what is the ultimate response right here. And we like to spell responsibility with a hyphen, meaning responsibility. What is your ability to respond? Again, coming back to that onus of I believe that the most important skill you could possess is the ability to protect yourself or your family. And I get a lot of people who go, "Oh, come on, man, you're like Chicken Little, the sky is falling." I go, no, no, no. Like whatever you're into, you're a stamp collector, you like cars, you like watches, you like magic. I don't know, whatever you're into, if unless you hate people and you live alone, if I said to you, this artistic pursuit or this materialistic goal of yours or whatever, that's gone, but you get to keep your most favorite people, grandma, your dog, whatever, or keep your stamp collection, and I'm taking your grandma or your mother or your kid or your whatever. People freak when I go, it probably won't happen, but I, it's bizarre because most people practice self-defense in all aspects of their life except actual self-defense. In other words, brushing your teeth is a form of self-defense, right?
Yep.
Eating properly and understanding a little bit about nutrition and is a form of self-defense. Deciding you need to get better sleep quality is a form of self-defense. Not running across the street without looking both ways is self-defense. Putting your seatbelt on is self-defense. Driving carefully is self-defense. Talking to certain people with like being nice to your boss is a form of self-defense, right? How many of you listening to this have some passive aggressive boss who you go, "Yes, sir, I'll get that done tomorrow." And then when he leaves the room, you go, "What a fucking asshole. I hate that guy." But it's a form of self-defense when you kiss his ass because the protection is security. And so I make this joke that holistically everyone practices a form of self-defense except for actual self-defense. What would you do if somebody did this? And you go, "Oh, I don't need to know that. That'll never happen." Again, it's the outsourcing of the safety. I live in a bubble.
Yep. And that's what I love about thinking about self-defense in that literal way, which is there are better strategies for managing that. There are worse strategies for managing that. And outsourcing it, saying, "Well, I'll never have to think about it," is a really bad strategy. That strategy also robs you of the ability to make those informed decisions about what's best for me. And
Right.
that's why any life guru or business guru or somebody selling an e-course online about aligning your energy chakras, anybody that's trying to teach me and can't manage base layer physical reality, none of what they're trying to share is built on a foundation that could withstand the smallest hiccup. So that's
Right.
why anybody I want to listen to gotta handle some hands, right? Like that, without that core competency, none of your other advice really matters to me.
Yeah, I mean, that might be extreme for some people, you know, like Hey, I'm interested in yoga, but you and I need to go 3 rounds first. I want to
Right.
make sure that you
Well,
can handle
that's
yourself.
how I explain. I go, well, my interest in martial arts and self defense and stuff is basically like yoga, except if somebody tries to push me off the mat, I'll know what to do about it.
Right.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, could you not push me off the mat? De-escalate, right? Just the
Well,
the whole 9 yards.
in a more metaphysical way, Alan Watts. I don't know if you know the name Alan Watts. So a very, very famous American Zen master. One of his great lines is if you can't meditate in a boiler room, you just can't meditate. And what he's talking about in a more metaphysical way with what you said there, because I think we insulted yoga instructors there. I think, but is um, is that if you can only meditate when you're away at a retreat where you've got people preparing your meal and there's no sound and there's no this and that, that's truly not meditating, because if you can't reintegrate into the real world. And so that's the whole thing, is the system that I built, um like, is three-dimensional, where I say, I've actually said to people I've trained who've called me up, for whatever business coaching or whatever, and they're like, man, I'm really nervous about this. I go, okay, you did the physical training with me, and at the end of the course I asked you, will you do everything you can? Remember, I said earlier, those people who manage their fear manage to fight. That doesn't mean that they won. A lot of you listening to this assumed they won. Here's the thing: if the fight's going to happen, regardless of what you do, the only chance you have to win, to emerge victorious, is to fight. So if somebody's brought it to you in a relationship, in business, or in violence, and you just do nothing, you're an accomplice to your murder. You're accomplice to losing your company. You're accomplice to destroying a relationship, as opposed to, I was fighting for it. Um, and so it's an interesting thing. The idea here is just, I've got to change at the core of it. It's the people who manage the fear manage the fight. I got to change the relationship with fear, and that allows me to be in the fight. And statistically, they've done kind of interviews with people post encounters. The people who just let violence happen to them suffered far greater emotional, psychological, um, post incident stress than the people who fought back. And even if they lost, there's a part of their dignity, pride, self esteem that was, I was in the fight. I was in the fight.
Mm-hmm.
It just
I
wasn't my
made it.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The boiler room detail is really interesting to me because the fear and agitation interrupts your ability to be present with the moment, right? Like that
Sure.
totally hijacks that whole process. So the other part of that for me is stillness, the ability to maintain stillness so that you can be present in the moment. It's easiest to maintain that stillness when you're by yourself at that retreat where it's quiet. You can sit and stare at the wall, and there's not even a bird singing to distract you from your meditation, right? So then that takes a lot of practice. Not even a lot of people can do it when it's perfect
Right.
situation, but you get your competency up, and then you need to maintain that stillness in motion when you get up from seated meditation and walk around throughout your day and being present there. And then that's still even easy mode based on relationship, where now you have to proactively interact with other people. Like, good luck, buddy. Like
Right.
that, but it's that ability to maintain stillness and at least go, I didn't choose this, but I'm in this. Let's do it
Yeah.
is not easy.
And this might be semantics, but I would suggest um, replacing the word stillness with just awareness. That, and the reason I say that is, even during this interview, you've had conversations in your head. That's a good thought. Don't forget that. Come back to that. Oh, he's going really long here. I wanted to mention this. Fuck, I'm gonna, like, okay. I wonder if our audience is gonna dig this or not. Oh, I didn't realize, uh, you know, Tony would say that parallels. And you have these talks here,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in here. I'm out. I'm here. I'm in my garage gym, and it just so happened, because my wife didn't look at my schedule, she's got 3 workers at the house. I got window washers outside. I got a guy drilling over here. We had 3 deliveries on the way, and I'm meditating in a boiler room. And multiple times here, I had 2 deliveries. Everyone listening to this can't see this, but we're on video here. But Jonathan could see me giving my thumbs up to people and gesturing, but if I was trying to be still, I'd be agitated, because I'd go, hey, can somebody get rid of that butterfly? I'm trying to meditate. And the Zen master wants to crack me with the stick, going, that's the butterfly. Let the butterfly be a butterfly. And I'm going, I need to, right? So it's just this awareness. And the fun thing about awareness is that, 2 of the workers, and I told them, I said, hey, I got a podcast in my garage. It's going to be a problem. Is your machine loud? And they said, no, but they're like talking loud. They're whistling. And I want to, I don't have their text. Hey, asshole. I'm like, but that's the thought that goes through my head. Dude, where's your situational awareness? But my internal awareness goes, like, observe that, and now return to center, come back to Jonathan, right? And so how does this tie into, this ties into your work on stage?
Really does.
Right.
And you got to experience it too as a presenter, because early on in my life, it was, oh, that person's texting in the back of the audience. How dare they? It is now my sole mission to get them back at the expense of the other 99 people who were having fun. And now I've jerked all of their attention over to this situation that I shouldn't even care about. And now the whole experience is derailed because my ego is tied into controlling this person. What a stupid way to do it. Now it's just like, I don't care, man. Like,
but that's that first rep, where that awareness, and you sit through it and you go, let that go, let that go. When I teach our coaches, about, because they got to be presenters, whether they're teaching one person or a small group or a big group. And one of the things I tell people, I go, the guy yawning in the first row just had a really shitty night's sleep. It's not because you're boring, although you might be really boring. But that person who's on their phone, is their wife is expecting, and he's checking something there. It's not him typing, this guy really sucks, I can't wait for the next speaker or performer. It's just reframing yourself so that you've got a plan B when you get this like negative thought that's going to derail you. But you can't do any of that. I said it earlier. One of the things when we're teaching our fear management program, one of the important kind of domino events is when a stimulus gets introduced too quickly. You're up there going, this is great. And then there's a guy on his phone and you're going, man. And now you're all in there. Is when you get the fear spike, it triggers doubt, and doubt creates hesitation, and hesitation creates procrastination. Procrastination creates fixation. All of those are, if you think of them as links in a chain, you can sever the link that makes this chain of events stronger. And then let's flip this metaphor also to dominoes. They all collide into each other. Well, the last one, doubt becomes hesitation, procrastination, fixation. Unchecked, that becomes non-clinical anxiety. That's me backstage going, honey, I forgot everything I know. Because I had been percolating, marinating in my fear without the self-awareness at the time. Why? Well, here I am, a professional speaker, public speaker. Why am I freaking out? Well, just so you understand what happened to me, even though I teach fear management, is when they asked me to talk, that was a stimulus being introduced too quickly. It was like, yeah, you want it tomorrow? No, could you do something like now, like in the next hour? Yeah, sure. Okay, where's it going to be? Just over here in the ballroom. I should have known ballroom was a cue, right? Or just over here in this small phone booth. Oh, it's a half a person. No, ballroom, right? Big room. And then I go in, I look, and I see this thing's packed, and then I see the big TVs, and then it was like, how long can you talk for? Can you do 30 minutes? I'm like, yeah, sure. And then they come back and they go, hey, guys running over, can you cut it to 20 minutes? Well, that's changing all the things. So for me, it was if I put it in self-defense terms, if I say to you, Jonathan, would you defend yourself against one person? And you go, yeah, if I had to. And I go, okay, get ready to fight. Oh, by the way, it's 11 people. I forgot. I thought, right. For me, it was
I forgot
11.
the second one in the
Yeah.
tens place. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, what happened was it was 11 like stimuli coming at me. And it just suddenly I started thinking about, holy shit, I shouldn't have said yes, as opposed to let's go, you know. But that's what it is. It's for everybody listening. If you're still listening, thank you. But for everyone listening, um, I really think that if we taught kids how to think and differentiate between the psychology of fear versus the biology of fear, we change the world. Think about when you were growing up, the the people you didn't ask to, hey, can I go to that, the moxie that you developed years later, can I work for you, can I do this job? There's a series of events that you avoided because of fear, whether it was a high school dance, whether it was asking a teacher something, asking a friend something, asking, and there's so many things that I think about growing up as a young kid, then as a teenager, and even as an adult that I didn't do because unconsciously I was letting the fear of fear. And it's a question we ask people: if you didn't fear fear, what would you do? What would you do? Right? So it's really profound. And after all my decades teaching physical self-defense and being able to get to the point where um, when I'm coaching someone, I'll go, hey, you went to my course and you said to me you would protect yourself for your family, right? And now you're worried about this deal or this presentation or, getting a divorce or asking someone to marry you or going up on stage. I go, is there any chance that when you make this presentation that they're going to pull out a gun and go, no thanks, and shoot you? And they're like, no, there's no chance. I go, then you're good, because you did this training where you said you'll do what you can to protect yourself. This pales in comparison to that, because nobody's going to try and kill you at this meeting, right? So when you put stuff in that context, then everything pales in comparison. And now suddenly the fear management training becomes holistic, where you approach everything in life. You get a fear spike, you go, that was a fear spike. I know what that is. What is that? Okay. Oh, I got to, if I fixate too long on that, I create non-clinical anxiety. And then suddenly I didn't do the work. I didn't do the preparation. And so you talk to anybody that has good self-awareness and they will tell you that they're a fear manager. It's a new t-shirt we're coming out with. It says fear manager on it,
I
right?
love
It's
that. I love
but
that.
it's cool at the end. I've trained with a lot of tier one operators, retired and people still in the military. And there's a group of them that go, they're like, no fear, man, let's go. And then there's a group that goes, no, there's always fear. There's fear, but you're trained. So you just, when it's go time, you're just going, right? And you've got to, and this whole thing is like, you've changed through acclimation and repetition and acceptance. You've changed your fear of going on stage, presenting, so that you still have it. But if somebody asked you about your fear before talking to me, because maybe your relationship, one of my goals is to change people's relationship with fear, because fear has a stigma. I make this joke. I go, hey, this is a fear management talk, but fear actually needs new management. Because if I asked you, hey, do you want to talk about fear? You'd probably say, I'm good. I don't want to talk about fear. Like most people, particularly men, don't want to talk about fear. But it's semantics. So if I said to you, Jonathan, before you got to know my body of work, if someone said to you, Jonathan, are you afraid to go on stage? You go, fuck no, I've been on stage 1,000 times. But if somebody said, do you have a particular ritual before an event that you do in terms of sleep or a certain meal or preparation or whatever? And you went, yeah, well, that's inspired by fear. Without the word fear, is like, hey, where's my lucky, fighters? The athletes are the worst. I train guys and they're going, hey, Anyone see my mouth guard? Where's your backup mouth guard? No, yeah, I need my other mouth guard, because that mouth guard, they won 3 fights in a row with this new mouth guard. I'm going,
Yep.
dude, let me tell you something. Your left hook has nothing to do with that mouth guard. That's your, and to get athletes out of this fear loop, and I'm suspicious, I'm superstitious as well, right? But I can laugh at myself when I go, where I go metaphorically, hey, where's my lucky rabbit foot? And then I laugh and I go, yes, that's got nothing to do with your skill,
Yep.
But anyways,
Yeah. And
fun stuff.
it really is. And I look forward to the years of conversation that we got ahead of us, because holy shit, this is cool stuff. And I think this is about as good a place to put a pin in it as ever. I've taken up a whole bunch of your time, which I appreciate you spending here. So to stick the dismount,
Yes.
rep your stuff, man. Shamelessly share whatever it is that you'd
Shamelessly
like people
plug
to
me.
find. Yeah.
Listen, I post a lot on Instagram, Tony Blauer on Instagram. And if you go to my link in my bio there's all sorts of information. I just put out as a pivot during this very strange time in our lives. I wrote a guide called Managing Fear, on Managing Fear, called Making Friends with Fear. And it's a free ebook, and then you're going to get tagged, and then I'm going to pester you to try and buy our No Fear program. So I'm shamelessly and transparently telling you, but I will tell you this. I had a guy, he's the podcast host called the Secure Dad podcast. And he had me on, and I started talking about this, and he ended up purchasing this No Fear program. And he messages me after. He said, I listened to it 3 times. I made pages of notes. He said, I never mentioned this, but I said, I've had like kind of mild anxiety. And he said, I think it's gone from listening to this. And he goes, is that possible? And I said, well, if I was your therapist, I'd say it's not, because I'm still paying off my country house, and no offense, I'm friends with a lot of therapists and they do great work. But the bottom line is, depending on what you're dealing with, and we're all dealing with fear, very often it's a metaphoric light switch. It's turning on the light and realizing, oh, it's this. And the most important thing I can tell you is this, is that I'm not selling some bullshit where it's like, do my program and you will never feel fear again. It's no, if fear is holding you back from doing things, fear is wasting time, and time is the only resource you can't regenerate. And so if you agree that a fear spike will always trigger doubt and hesitation and procrastination, why aren't you moving? Well, wait a minute. Even if you're not saying I'm afraid, you're going, wait a minute, explain to me how this works again. Like,
I'm afraid this isn't going to go right. I'm afraid I don't understand. Yeah.
But even if you don't use the word afraid, because remember, fear needs new management. There's a stigma, Jonathan. I go, like my staff, I go, hey guys, I need this done here. No. Got it. An hour later. Did you guys do that? Well, we're still trying to figure out guys, we're a fear management company. And I always remind them, you can ask me any question. Like if you're sitting there going, fuck, I don't know what to do, it's because you're afraid. But it's not like afraid like you got your thumb in your mouth like Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber in the bathroom scene going, mommy, 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 right? So people don't realize this. Fear is noxious. Have you ever walked, we're supposed to end this call and we need to because I got a zillion things to do, but have you ever walked in a room, Jonathan, and walked over to somebody you know well and care about and went, hey, what's the matter? What's going on? And they looked at you and went, nothing. What are you talking about? In other words, because body language is 60% of communication, they're burdened by something, but they don't, because they don't have the self-awareness. So I can't even explain. People who've done my program have used it to teach their kids how to overcome their fear of swimming. Another dad got his teenage daughter off of antidepressants using the system. Like insane stuff where people write in. I had a father write in and tell me, like in 1993, I released an audio tape called Cerebral Self-Defense and a companion tape called Performance Enhancement Psychology and Metacognition. These are audio, like, who releases audio tapes on self-defense? How the fuck do you learn self-defense by audio? Right?
Right.
Right. What, I'm not the drone you're looking for. Like what do we, right? And this guy 10 years later sent me an email thanking me for helping raise his children. Dude, um, if you remind me, or if you ever get to one of my live events, it's one of the slides I show, because I explain to people what the guy explains is that he took my research on fear management and it spoke to him. So the guy's like a tenured professor. He's like not an idiot, right? It spoke to him in such an impactful way that he shared it with his kids. He taught. Remember, I said earlier, if I, as a kid, if somebody told me this is what the physiology of fear feels like, it's an adrenaline dump, sweaty palms, you're breathing hard, shallow breathing, chest breathing. But more importantly than physiology of fear is understanding the psychology of fear. What is going on in your mind? And if somebody had said to me, it's okay to be scared, you still need to tell the truth. It's okay to be scared. You still need to be brave. And here's one of our other maxims: you can't be brave if you're not afraid. Bravery and courage doesn't exist without the ignition of fear. If you see something, think about how heavy that is. You see something in the news that's incredibly courageous, and you wonder if you could do it. That's what happens when we see stuff. Oh, fuck it. We might not say it out loud. Wow. We go, wow, that was brave. That was courageous. And we assume there was some special gift this person had. And in many cases, there's training. But there's a lot of cases where the person's being interviewed and they say, hey, I just did what anyone would have done, right? And those moments, I need people to understand that it's this choiceless choice, and they just go for it, whether it's the teenager that runs into the burning building or the person who stops a fight or whatever the hell it is. And if you almost think about it, and I look at that and I study that stuff and I go, I want, if I weren't there and this was happening to my family, I would want there to be a courageous bystander. I need people to understand how to manifest courage. And I need you to understand this, that if you think about the fear for too long, you create this downward spiral of this pulling of fear. And I call it the fear loop. And the only way you break that is by saying, I'm afraid and I got to do this. And I'm going to use the fear as fuel. And so in this metaphor, it's like my body is my car, my mind is my nav system, my map. And what do I need in a crisis to drive? Don't be a smartass and say, oh, we drive a Prius. We need to be, in my metaphor here, the fuel is fear. In this, I've got a situation that's way outside my comfort zone and I'm scared. And if I just remember now, if I said to you, if you don't say, will you marry me now, she's gone forever, or he's gone forever. And one of the things in our classes, in our courses, we say, what will it cost you if you don't fight right now? What could it cost you? So there's a lot of really deep, inner work where people connect to, what's at stake, right? So anyways, we tried to end this call like a half hour ago,
but that's a really good point to end on, which is fear isn't some unfortunate thing that is bad when it's there. It's actually an essential part of living and surviving. So learn to know it, love it, use it.
Yeah. And in some places, you're only going to love it after. But you in the moment you go, okay, this is happening to me. It's a choiceless choice. What am I going to do? So I would recommend you all get that fear book. It's free. Know that we're going to try and sell you other shit after there. There's some shameless plugging, but the shit works. It will enhance your survivability and the quality of your life. I guarantee that. And if any of you are looking for actual physical security and personal safety, Check that out. All that stuff is on my Instagram, Facebook, and my website. My website for all of our programs is Blauer Training systems.com, and my last name is spelled Blauer systems training, and we'll get you the links to all that stuff.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, dude, thank you so much. We'll call that a wrap.